This is another question from the audience, who would prefer to remain anonymous. Recently, there was a police arrest, or there was a police incident in which a Dominican-Iraq War veteran, Dennis Reynoso, was killed. Yet the official story is he had gone for the police's gun. There's a lot of controversy surrounding it. Someone would like to know in the audience, would you support an independent investigation into the death of Dennis Reynoso?
Oh, I would absolutely not impede any investigation into that. We already have had the police investigation into it, and I believe the Essex County District Attorney's Office also investigates when there's an officer-involved weapon in a shooting. But if somebody wanted to have a third-party investigator come in and look at the facts and circumstances, I see no reason why they shouldn't be allowed to do that.
Council President Finley?
Sure. I feel the same way. I think our Lynn Police Department does a great job. I have faith in the leadership of the Lynn Police Department. But if there are questions of impropriety or something occurring that people don't think is accurate or above board, and a third party can come in and investigate that, I say why not? What I do think, and I don't know any details of that, I don't think any politician should get in the middle of any type of police investigation. I'm confident that the police department would come out indicating that they did everything proper, legal, and right. But I think if the people of the city want to feel more comfortable that that occurred, then an independent third party is the right way to go.
For our next question, this is a two-part question. If elected or re-elected, will you use your position as mayor to actively support the campaign to raise the state minimum wage above $8 an hour? And they would like to have a clear yes or no answer on that first part. The second part is to give voters an insight into your philosophy about the economy and how it should work. Please tell us about your personal view on this. Should the state and federal government set minimum wages to higher levels, lower, about the same, or should they not exist at all? And briefly explain. And this is a question from Bob Williams. Council President Finn?
Thank you. I'll answer them both collectively. I think elected officials can't sit on the fence. I think elected people are looking for leadership from their elected officials and to take a stand. The same way I took a stand on level 3 sex offenders, the homeowners, Bill of Rights, whatever it may be, you can't back away and wait for something else to happen. I co-sponsored with a couple of other city councilors about 3 or 4 weeks ago a council resolution, and it's only a resolution, supporting the minimum wage raise, to hike the minimum wage. I don't think people can support their families on the minimum wage as it is now. I think people are struggling to send their kids to college, and the college kids don't have any spending money. They need to work. I think that needs to go up. What it does is it allows people to take care of their own bills. People are choosing between food and medicine. I took a stand. The council voted unanimously to pass that. Is it symbolic? Yes, it is symbolic. Is it a step of leadership? I think it's a step of leadership to show how you feel so that you're not afraid to take a decision, or so you don't want to sit on the fence. Because one of the things that I think I've earned a reputation of since I've been on the city council and the school committee is there are things that you may agree with or disagree with what I've done. But you've always known where I've stood. And I take that philosophy with me, and I'm proud of the fact that I voted, and I was one of the co-sponsors to raise the minimum wage, and with all due respect to the mayor, she returned it back to the council unsigned. Thank you.
First of all, as mayor, I'm elected to take care of the city of Lynn. If I wanted to get into issues like minimum wage or federal funding of schools, I would have run for the state legislature or Congress. And I wish that every time Councilor Phelan talked about me returning that unsigned, he would add the second sentence that I wrote on my refusal to sign it. I wrote, I am returning this unsigned. This is an issue for the state voters to decide. I don't believe it is the mayor of Lynn's position to be weighing in on anything that is a state or a federal issue. Saying that, I do believe it should go up. By how much, I don't know. That's for the economists to decide, not for me to decide. But I have heard both sides of the issue. I spoke to somebody who put it in some pretty simple terms. He's a small businessman, but he said, if I can employ 10 people at $8 an hour, I have that pool of $80 to expend for that amount of time. And the minimum wage goes up, and I can only employ 8 people at $10 an hour. What am I to do? I'll have 2 people out of work. We're not talking about somebody who has a huge profit margin in his business. He's a small business owner, he's a gas station owner. And he's forced with sending somebody to the unemployment line or paying them more money. So, as I said, I think it should go up. By how much, I don't know. But as mayor, I believe it is my job to be running the city of Lynn and not to be interfering with the work of our other elected officials at the state and federal level. Thank you.
Our next question is from Ellen Morgan. If Lynn had a shutdown like Washington, what would you do to stop it? And we'll start with Mayor Kennedy.
We had a shutdown like Washington? Well, unlike Washington, I have proposed, and the city council has passed a budget in Lynn every year that I have been mayor. One of the issues that we have in Washington with the shutdown is because the government is currently depending on continuing resolutions for funding. And they've been doing this for nearly 5 years now. Without a budget, the only way they can keep operations going is to say, okay, we'll keep everything moving ahead with money from now through December or whatever. So I think in answer to the question, Ellen, is that we already have prevented something like that from occurring by passing the budgets. Because with those budgets, the funding for all of the programs contained in those budgets are insured until June 30th, in this case 2014. And under the rules of the city and the state, I will have my next budget over to the city council by May of next year, and the city council will discuss it, debate it, and ultimately vote on it by the end of June of next year. And we will again have no reason to even think about having a shutdown here because of our proper budgetary procedures.
But can you just ask the question again?
Yes, if Lynn had a shutdown like Washington, D.C., what would you do to stop it?
I would elect more Democrats.
Our next question is from Deborah Himes. What are your ideas for a long-term plan to replace or renovate our schools? Council President Fan, we'll start with you.
Sure. This is one of the things that's part of my economic plan. And I've been informing people of this over the last couple of weeks. The city of Lynn owns a piece of land on Route 1 in Lynnfield. There is a title search and a legal opinion that says it is not Lynn Woods. The Fat Cactus, the restaurant that's on Route 1, it abuts that to the left and to the right. It is worth millions of dollars. We have a billboard. There may be an issue that it's owned by the Lynn Water and Sewer Commission instead of the City of Lynn, but that's just a small transfer. What I say that we do, because the economy in real estate now is taking off, but we take that property, we either develop it, lease it, or sell it, and take those funds and put it into a dedicated revolving account solely for the improvement of the schools in the city of Lynn, where right now the estimated cost to fix our crumbling schools is upwards of $20 million. Nobody came up with this idea. Nobody said anything about it until I brought it up at 2 debates ago, and then we heard a response from Verona. And we didn't hear about it since then until I brought it up at the next debate, and then we got a response. This is an idea that I'm initiating. It's not Lynn Woods, and it's a revenue source that we've never tapped, and we should.
Okay, first of all, the City of Lynn's mayor's race is a nonpartisan election, and if more people stop voting party, voted the person, I don't think the country would be in the mess that it's in right now, and I blame both Democrats and Republicans for the mess things are in. Secondly, just a clarification on that land. It is watershed conservation land. As I understand it, it cannot be developed. It possibly can be sold, but it can't be developed. So I don't know what its worth is. There's also some question, I read up about this. It was all taking place in 2005. Bottom line is, it's a down real estate market. As the mayor of the city, there's no way I'm selling that land in a down real estate market no matter what. But my understanding, after the amount of research I've been able to do, is that it's watershed conservation land. Back to the issue. We've already gotten the Marshall Middle School approved. We have Pickering in the pipeline. I asked Rick Stoddard to head a subcommittee, not of just the school committee, but of other interested people in the city of Lynn, to identify the next schools that should go into that pipeline. And right now, it looks like Cobbett and Tracy. I'm not sure in what order those will be coming through the pipeline, but we need to have a systemic replacement of our aging school buildings. I have also put a line item of $1.75 million a year into repair and replacement of our city buildings. And since the vast majority of our city buildings are in fact school buildings, we do a really good job. I have to say Mike Donovan does an excellent job with the state of the buildings that he has to keep them all up and running year after year. And I congratulate him on that. Thank you.
Our next question is from Michael Victoriano. What importance do you place on the parks and public spaces in our city? And do you have any plans for developing public spaces and parks? Mayor Kennedy, we'll start with you.
Oh, I think I've shown throughout my administration that I take great pride in City of Lynn's open spaces. We have worked with the City Council to pass a $4 million bond that is going to be improving parks in every single neighborhood of the city. I'd say probably $2 million of that $4 million is going into parks improvements. We've been very aggressive about getting grants. We've gotten a grant to restore the Lynn Commons. So not only is the Lynn Commons bandstand going to be handicap accessible from here on in with a lift, we're also going to have some improvements made to it, mile markers, period seating, period lighting that's really going to improve the look of it. We've also gotten $400,000 in a grant, another $400,000 for McManus Field, so that we can improve the soccer fields over there behind Lynn Tech, and also put another splash pad in for the children who live in that part of the city. And lastly, under my administration, we created the first ever dog park for the dogs of the city of Lynn. I mean, sometimes people forget about our dogs, but they like to have a place to run free. And now they do have a place to run free. For $25 a year, we had, at last count, 425 animals and their humans enjoying the dog park, and I think my record on that just stands for itself. Thank you.
Council President Bennett.
Thank you. Yes, the Lynn City Council did pass a $4 million bond, and I wish we could have done more, but we were unable to. 10 cities and parks across the city. I think everybody in the city is on the same page on this. Also included as that was money for the air conditioning of City Hall, the renovation of the roof at Fraser Field and the infield turf, parks in all different aspects of the city. And, you know, and I think that's a good thing, because you need to improve places for kids to go, because if you don't have places for kids to go and you don't keep kids busy, they're going to get in trouble. You know, and there are many things that we could do if we had more money. And, you know, and I keep hearing and reading about people taking credit for all these new renovations in the city. But if you look at where it came from and where it generated from, the vast majority come through the City Council first. Thank you.
Our next question is from Joseline Santos. The question is, why don't they have more programs to educate individuals to keep the city clean? So I suppose this would be a question more, would you consider public education programs to help Lynn residents take a more active role in cleaning the city? And we'll start with Council President Bailey. trash, any kind of dumping issues that may occur, something like that, a Keep Lynn Clean program, would you consider one?
Sure. I mean, unfortunately, one bad house can ruin a neighborhood. One of the things that we've aggressively done on the city council are try to get out-of-town landlords to get back involved in the neighborhood. A lot of out-of-town landlords will rent to somebody who's dealing drugs and just take the money and neglect their property and just have it fall apart. So what we've done is when we don't hear from those landlords and time goes by and months go by, we bring them in front of the city council, we invite them, they don't come. So what we then do is we hit them where we know we can get them. We hit them in the pocketbook. We send them a demolition order that if you don't come in front of us, that we're going to tear down your house. And that's the only way to get their attention is to hit them in the pocketbook. The other thing that we passed is we adopted a state law that allows the municipality, the city of Lynn, to go on a property if they have to fix up that health violation, clean the property, and attach a lien on that property so it doesn't cost the taxpayer anything. I would love to see a Keep Lynn Clean program where neighbors are volunteering. I know that we have a pilot program for solar paneled trash barrels that are coming in, but we really need community buy-in for this, and I would support them.
Okay.
Well, we have done a number of education outreach programs with regard to the public and trash. A couple of years ago, we created a public service announcement in which we had a Haitian man who speaks Spanish and is married to a Dominican woman go out along with a Cambodian gentleman to actually film themselves, and this was shown on LinCam, speaking in their languages and showing what should and shouldn't be done with trash, because sometimes the visual is the best way to do it. All of the laws and ordinances and lectures aren't going to necessarily get the point across, as well as going up to an overflowing heap of garbage and saying, you just can't do this. We have offered programs whereby Lynn Lumber used to offer up trash cans at cost, and they were steel trash cans, so that they were able to resist any rodent infestations because the rodents couldn't chew through them. We have leaflets available in the Inspectional Services Department in multiple languages explaining to people how to properly store trash and then how to properly place the trash out on trash day. When all of that fails, I know that our inspectors will make personal visits to problem households to see if they can educate the people before going to fine them. And then as a last resort, as Councilor Phelan was mentioning, we now have the 40U program where the fines will be tacked directly onto the violator's tax bill, and they won't be able to sell their house until the 40U fines are paid. So we have made efforts in that regard.
Thank you. Our next question is from Emily Kirby. She's 12 years old, so she can't vote for either of you, but that isn't stopping her from staying engaged in the political process. So Emily, where are you? Stand up. Emily's question is, what can you do to help middle school kids from changing from good kids to becoming violent? So how would you address violence in our public school system? Yeah.
Okay.
Well, start with you, Mary.
Emily, thank you for your question. First of all, I recognize my kids both went through the public schools, and when they went to middle school, they went to Pickering Middle School. And I know that that's a really critical time in a kid's life, because you start to mix with a new group of people. You're not just going to your neighborhood elementary school anymore. There's new kids to get to know, and there's new things to try, and frankly, there are new temptations around as well. So I consider middle school a very, very important time in the development of a child and getting them on the right path. Which is why, when I talked earlier about restoring the school resource officers, we had 4 that we could restore. And the question became, were we going to split them between the middle schools and the high schools, or were we going to put them only at the high schools, or were we going to put them in the middle schools? And the feeling amongst all of the school superintendent, the middle school principals, the head student resource officer, the chief of police, and myself, was to put them in the middle schools, because that's where we really have the best chance of keeping kids on the right track. Now, with respect to other acts of violence, under my administration as chair of the school committee, we were the first community in the Commonwealth to have our anti-bullying protocol initiated and approved. And that anti-bullying protocol requires that every school designate an anti-bullying coordinator. So if you are having any problems in your school, no matter if you're at the middle school level, high school, or elementary school, there will be a trusted adult there to take your problems to and hopefully put an end to that bullying.
Council President.
Thank you very much, Emily. Thank you for the question. I know it's tough to do that in front of a big audience like this. When I was on the school committee, one of the things that I was very proud of is, we passed the toughest, strongest discipline code and expulsion policy in the city's history, mandating, I think a little before its time, that type of behavior won't be tolerated. But I think it's great if every community has passed an anti-bullying policy, but I think we need to take it a step further. Because if you have an anti-bullying coordinator, which is great, what kids at the middle school level are going to go, hey, I've got to go seek out the anti-bullying coordinator and tell them? Kids are embarrassed. Kids don't want to talk about it. Kids don't want to bring it up to somebody else. Once it happens, they go the other way. They get quiet, they turn. What we need to do is mandate that our teachers seek out, search, and try to identify people that are bullies. So that the responsibility is not on the child, the responsibility is on the teacher to look at it, because bullying occurs in many different ways now. Bullying can occur by ignoring somebody. That's humiliating to somebody in the middle school level. So we have to look at it, how does it really happen? Not a policy, a book, which is a nice thing, but how does it really happen at that grade level? And that's what we have to implement. We have to mandate that our teachers and paraprofessionals are the ones that are looking out for the kids, not waiting for the kids to come to them. Thank you.
Our next question from the public is a two-part question. As we are approaching the winter season, do you have a plan to keep our roads clean and safe? So I believe that has to do with snow removal for the winter season. And our second part is, who paid for the repavement of the following streets? Essex, Union, and Broad Street. And we'll start with Council President Finn.
To go backwards on Essex, Union, and Broad, wherever it comes from, it's always the taxpayer. Whether it comes from state monies that are given to the city. And we were actually very fortunate, the transportation bond bill that was just passed through the legislature, which increased the gas tax. At least one of the benefits we received additional chapter, I think it's 90 monies for roads. But one of the things, I've gone door to door frequently throughout this campaign, and I still hear was the abysmal job that the city did during last winter, the snowstorms that we've had over time. And there was the big snowstorm where people didn't get plowed out for over a week. The operation was not an efficient operation. The operation was not a good operation. And with all due respect, I blame the leadership of the DPW and the lack thereof. Because we've gone through, and people hear me say this, we've gone through an interim commissioner, an interim associate commissioner, an associate commissioner that's not working, he's retired, but he's still on the books. Our interim commissioner retired. We've now hired another interim commissioner. The interim associate commissioner is now the permanent associate commissioner. When I brought this up at debate the next morning, we got a letter. You can't have that type of leadership and expect the streets in the city of Lynn to be plowed properly. You need people who are experienced in there, people that know what they're doing, and you have to fix your streets before the winter comes. Because I go through the streets now, and the streets aren't fixed. There are potholes everywhere. The winter destroys the streets in Massachusetts. They destroy them in Lynn because we're so close to the beach, and it's been an area that's been neglected, and the city council has always been upset about this over the past 4 years. Thank you.
Okay. Number of things that brought up. First of all, with respect to that blizzard, it turned out to be one of the top 10, if not one of the top 5 storms that we've ever experienced here in the city of Lynn. And I want everybody to know that the plow drivers and the DPW did an outstanding job of getting our roads passable. Some people on side streets might have had to wait a little longer than others, but I can tell you that on that following Monday morning, you'll all remember Governor Patrick took the cars off the road at 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon. Well, that next Monday morning, following the end of the snowfall and the beginning of the cleanup, we did not miss our trash pickup that was scheduled for that day. Waste Management went around and picked up Lynn's trash for that Monday, and they told us we were virtually the only community that was able to get our roads in good enough shape to have that trash picked up. With regard to the DPW, again, I feel that this is unfair to slight the DPW and to slight my budget for the DPW. When I took over in 2009, I believe there were 45 DPW employees full-time on the budget. There are currently 47 full-time DPW employees on the budget. So it has nothing to do with the number of employees. We have, for this year, new plow drivers that are being interviewed and new chasers that are being interviewed. And the chasers are the people who go around and check the plow routes and make sure that they are being done properly, and if not, they send the drivers back to do it again. I've also committed $200,000 in new vehicle purchase money for the new DPW commissioner. And lastly, I know you wanted to ask, Essex, Broad, and Lewis were all paid for through Chapter 90 money.
My next question is from Highlands Coalition member Miguel Carrasco. There is somewhat of a cultural divide in the city of Lynn. What can be done to unite Lynn as one community? We'll start with Mayor Kennedy.
That has been my mission for the last 4 years. Again, I have been trying to be inclusive in everything, whether it's hiring in City Hall, appointing people to boards and commissions. I want people to have pride in the city and also to have pride in where they came from. One of the most successful programs that we have had started out as a result of somebody sending an angry email to my office. February 27th is Dominican Independence Day, so one day around the end of February, we raised the Dominican flag, and some lady emailed and said, "What makes them so special? Why can't you raise the flag of everybody? Why can't you raise the Irish flag? Why can't you raise the Italian flag?" And we said, gee, you know what? That's a great idea. So to date, we've had probably almost 20 flags raised for different communities, and it's so much more than just a 5-minute celebration. It allows people to come together in the community, and I'll tell you, invariably, as we raise that flag, the group of people who are there will start off by singing their own national anthem, and then move into a variation of God Bless America, or the Star Spangled Banner, or something like that. And I think it makes the people of Lynn feel more united. I have had many delegations from different communities visit with me in my office, the Bangladeshi community, the Cameroonian community. My door has always been open. I continue to have it be open. People, I think, know that they are welcome in City Hall and they are welcome to participate in the government under my administration, and I don't think they felt that way in the past.
Council President.
Thank you very much. You know, I think that's a goal of everybody to have actually one community. I've been very active in the Haitian, the Latino, Dominican Republic, Guatemalan community. I've coached in basketball leagues and soccer leagues, and you know, and I say this to everybody. The soccer team that I have been coaching for years, a bunch of girls that are now they're about 16, 17 years old, and the makeup of the team: African American, white, Colombian, Asian. But when I get out to soccer practice and they're putting their cleats on and their shin guards on, if you closed your eyes and you listened to them, you couldn't tell the difference. They're just all a bunch of teenage girls that won't stop talking. And when I raise my children, what I say to them, what I'm looking for is a goal in the city of Lynn and everywhere, and I expect from them, when they see somebody walking down the street, I don't want them to describe them, there's a white guy, or there's an African American guy, or there's a Latino woman. I want them to describe that person as a woman, as a man. Because when we get there, we are truly one community. Because that's what we should be shooting for, because everybody is the same, everybody is equal. Thank you.
Our next question is from Highlands Coalition member Wendy Joseph, and it's for both candidates. How has your campaign changed from the beginning until now, and what have you learned? And we'll start with Council President Bill.
Thank you. You know, I just was reminded of something. I'd like to just, if I can, and if I could actually just have a 15-second extra time. I think everybody knows that David Gass is a very active member of the Highlands Coalition. My understanding, he's been very sick lately, so I just want to reach out to him and point that out. How has my campaign changed? I've been working hard from the very beginning, and I'll never stop doing that. You know, I was knocked down. My father always taught me when you're knocked down to get right back up. I think that well, I'm not going to divulge my entire strategy is what I'm doing, but I don't think I did a great job of delivering my messages to what I wanted to do, or what I want to do in the future. So my focus is now, what are your ideas of economic development, job growth? What are your ideas on education? And that's what I'm pushing out there, so people understand, you know, what I'm about, what I'm trying to do, and the difference that I'm trying to make, and the vision that I have for the city of Highlands. Thank you.
I think in the beginning, I was so eager to mention all of the accomplishments that I've had in the last 4 years, that I was saying, oh, and about the dog park, and oh yeah, Ken's Cake and Chicken just came in, and oh my gosh, I forgot to tell you about the first Black District Chief that we've had. And I think I have started to focus and narrow my presentation to a very simple one that answers the question, why should we re-elect you? And I really did some introspection, and I thought, why do people like me? And there's really 4 basic areas that it comes down to. I care about, and I have improved, public safety tremendously. The number of public safety officers that we have on, the number of specialized community policing, preventative programs, collaborations with Straight Ahead Ministries, and Lynn Street Outreach Advocacy. So they like my ideas, they like my progress in public safety, as reflected by the endorsement of both the police and fire unions. They like my handling of the budget. I have been able to keep the taxes, and actually the average single-family tax bill went down this past year. They know that our bond rating has gone from a Baa1 to an A with a stable outlook. They like my idea of fairness, having lotteries for the senior tax abatement program, having lotteries for the summer jobs program. And they like my idea of being inclusive. They trust me, and I want people to focus on those 4 areas of my accomplishments. I get into the specifics of them in my campaign materials, and show them why I deserve another 4 years. I have to keep the message simple.
Our next question comes from, well, it's a long one. Our next question comes from school committee candidate Melissa Romaniello. Considering the state of our public school system, why did you both support not opening the superintendent's position? That's part one. Additionally, the Washington school was not reopened, it was better utilized, and Fallon only has 42 students. This is underutilization. Why did you both allow this to happen? And we'll start with Mayor Kennedy.
Okay, well, first of all, the Fallon School only has, I think, 8 classrooms in its entirety. And back when the Washington School was being used as a special ed center, I think at its peak it had about 75 students in there. So it made much more sense in terms of space utilization to reopen the Fallon School and bring those students. Some of them have a very close aid ratio, teacher ratio. We cannot have a typical classroom of 16 students with the types of needs that these students have. So it's not, if it's underutilized, it's not underutilized by a whole lot. And as I said, with the STEM program at the Washington School, the decision was made to introduce it by adding a year's worth of programs in each successive year that it's open. So eventually that one will be brought to full space utilization. And with regard to the superintendent, frankly, I think she does a very good job with a school system of 15,000 students. She has brought this school district out of level 4 status into level 3 status. She supports things like the Learning and Leadership Collaborative, the English Language Learners programs, the wraparound zone initiatives. She's willing to try new things. And I think she's done a good job, and I felt that she deserved to have her contract renewed.
Thank you. To answer your first question directly, I didn't allow anything to happen because I'm not a member of the school committee and don't have a say in either the Washington or the Fallon School. The second part is the superintendent. When that vote was going down, I do have dealings with the superintendent, and I went down to support the superintendent. I think that the single most difficult position in the city of Lynn is being the superintendent of schools. It is a thankless job. There are 14,679 students, last count, probably goes up and down every single day in the city of Lynn. Take that, multiply that by all the parents. Trying to keep all of those people happy is a very difficult thing to do. The thing I like about her is that her decisions are not political. She makes a decision. She's not afraid to make a decision. People don't always agree with those decisions. However, she makes it, and she's a leader. She doesn't sit on the fence. Those are the qualities that you need in a superintendent, and that's why I went down to show my support on that evening. Thank you.
Our next question from the public is, undocumented workers are blamed for overcrowded schools, crime, trash, etc. in our city. How big of a problem do you think undocumented people are in the city of Lynn, if you consider it a problem at all? And what steps, funding, solutions would you propose to help Lynn either properly integrate undocumented individuals or handle the issue in another way? We'll start with Council President Finn.
Sure. You know, this country was built on immigrants. They had a different color skin back then. And I think when children come to the city of Lynn, they are children. They deserve an education. This generation, just like our forefathers, deserved an education when they came to the United States of America. You know, my wife kills me because I always go back to soccer. And, there was a kid who I coached for a number of years. And a couple of years ago, he told me he was very proud. He was Guatemalan, and he got into UMass Boston. He came a long way from being an angry little kid, and I coached him for a long time. But it turned out, and he had gone through the Lynn school system from day one. It turned out that his older brother, who was born in the United States, and his younger brother, who was born in the United States, there wasn't an issue. But when his mother was pregnant with him, they went home for a visit. And she delivered him early, prematurely, in Guatemala. He was there for about 2 weeks, and then he came here. He could not go to UMass Boston because he was considered undocumented or illegal, as people put on it. Even though he spent every single minute of his life in the United States of America except for 2 weeks. Now that's just wrong. So we have a responsibility to educate the children that live in the city of Lynn, whatever culture they may come from, because diversity is a strength. Thank you.
I'm not disagreeing with anything that Council Phelan said, but I just wanted, the question is about undocumented workers, right? And what we're doing with respect to undocumented workers.
Yeah.
So talking about adults rather than children. is how I understood the question.
We could be talking about a person of any age.
Okay, well, then I hear the term worker, I'm thinking older. So what I'm going to do is tell you about a specific instance that many of you may have heard about. It's an issue that's facing Lynn Public Schools. And that is, you have heard about the unaccompanied minors who are coming in from Guatemala. It's been difficult for the school system, mainly in terms of planning, because I believe at the last point that I talked to Dr. Latham, we had 93 unaccompanied minors coming into the city. These are people between the ages, usually men, boys and men, between the ages of 14 and 18. They don't have their real birth certificates. Some of them do not even speak Spanish. They come from the rural areas of San Marco in Guatemala, and they speak an Indian tribal dialect, and they can't write. They're illiterate in any language. So we have reached out to the Guatemalan Council and the Guatemalan faith community, and together we are all developing a program that is going to keep these people within the realm of the Lynn Public Schools, maybe not exactly as Lynn Public Schools students, but with the collaboration of the council and the faith community and the school system, we're going to teach them English, tailor the programs in such a way that they'll be able to work during the day, and we'll offer these programs at night or perhaps on weekends. We want to see the people who are here get a proper education, no matter where they come from, and we're working to do that.
Our next question from the public is, both of you are for openness and transparency in government. And keeping with this openness, please comment on what the outcome of the civil rights case against the city and other parties involving the church on April Road. Would you be able to discuss your views and your opinions on that matter? We'll start with Mary Kennedy.
I signed a confidentiality agreement, so I am not allowed to comment on the settlement. I don't even know if I can tell you the number of figures in the settlement amount without violating that confidentiality agreement. I've heard a number of stories speculating on what that settlement was, what the amount was, and what other conditions were in that settlement. And I have to say, from source to source, they all sounded to be pretty consistent. So if you think you heard an answer on what the settlement was, you probably heard the right answer, but I can't tell you that you did. So, I'm really sorry. I'm bound by the confidentiality agreement, and I have to leave it at that.
Council President Finn.
And it's my understanding that there is a confidentiality agreement on that, so I would agree with Her Honor on that issue. So, thank you.
Loose lips sink ships, huh?
Can't.
All right. And I think that about does it for our questions. I have a question of my own I would like to ask. It's a little impromptu. Lynn has been designated by the UN High Commission for Refugees as a safe haven city, as an immigrant city where people who have survived trauma and hardship overseas and throughout the world can come here and be safe. And we have 53 different languages spoken in the Lynn Public School System as a result of that. And we really, as a city, don't have the resources that we need to cope with this issue. So my question to you is, as mayor, would you lead an effort, or would you spearhead some kind of initiative to go to the federal government, the state government, or even the United Nations to demand resources so that we can properly care for the individuals who have survived these serious hardships overseas?
Yes, we have done that. In fact, I just told you a little bit about our outreach to the Guatemalan consulate is located in Providence, Rhode Island. But because of the number of Guatemalans in the Lynn community, I think we're upwards of 3,000 Guatemalan residents here in the city of Lynn now. We've made sure that we have a very close relationship with her staff, and as I said, we've now brought in the Guatemalan faith community and the superintendent of schools to make sure that we are offering the highest level of service that we can to that particular population. We have also been working with Congressman Tierney's office. We've had a number of meetings with Congressman Tierney, again, the superintendent, and myself, along with Congressman Tierney, to figure out how there might be a better way to handle this. Maybe if we regionalize, we were talking about how many of the undocumented workers that are coming in, and not just coming into Lynn, they're coming into East Boston, they're coming into Revere, they're coming into Everett and Chelsea, and maybe there's a way to have a center so that the costs of educating become more regionalized as opposed to the responsibility of one particular school system. We do think that there is enough volume, if you will, that this could very easily be solved by a regional effort. But we know that it's going to take a state, if not a federal, effort to get that accomplished. I do, again, I'll repeat it, I want to see everybody who's in the city of Lynn be able to achieve a quality education while they're here.
Thank you. I would disagree with any type of regionalizing that type of education. I think it isolates people. I think it stigmatizes people, and I don't think it's inclusive. And what we're trying to do as a community and a government is be more inclusive. You're part of our community. We're not trying to isolate you or keep you separate. That's archaic thinking. I think it's a responsibility of the mayor of the city of Lynn, whomever that may be, that they have to work with their United States senators, their congressmen, their state delegation. Anywhere you can seek to obtain funds, it's your responsibility to do that, to bring it into the city. Thank you.
That will be all for the questions for the evening. But before we go to the closing statements, I'd like to recognize a few more candidates and elected officials who trickled into the debate. We have Rick Starbird, who is a current school committee member. We have Jake Keogh, who is a Ward 5 candidate. And we also have Katerina Kudanis, who is a candidate for council at large. And now we'll move to closing remarks. As determined by coin toss, City Council President Tim Phelan will begin.
Thank you very much. You've done a great job tonight. Again, thank you to the Ford School, the Highlands Coalition, and the questions from the audience. You know, I found over the years that the people of the City of Lynn really don't ask for much. They ask for an affordable roof over their heads, a job, good schools for their children, safe neighborhoods, and leadership, vision, and guts from their elected officials. I showed leadership and I showed guts for the little guy, for standing up against the big banks with the homeowners' Bill of Rights. I showed leadership by standing up and making a decision on the minimum wage raise. I know that my opponent said you should vote people, and I think you should vote people. But to say that the philosophies of a Democrat and a Republican aren't part of who the candidates are is not accurate. I have a vision for the children of the city of Lynn, with year-round schools for our pre-Ks for the first time in the city's history, because the long-range benefits outweigh any political barrier, and we have a moral responsibility to get it done. I have a vision of an economic plan that will spur development and job growth, long range for Lynn residents. I have a vision of a diverse city growing, living and prospering together. We need to open our eyes to not only our successes, but our failures, and learn from them. We need to open our minds to our collective vision for better neighborhoods. And we need to open our hearts to ensure that all the children of this city get the education that they deserve, and it's not left to a law. Thank you.
I'm going to make my point about labels by contrasting two candidates. One of the candidates sends his or her children to Lynn Public Schools. One of the candidates spends $15,900 a year to send a school-age child to a prep school in a suburb. One of the candidates tells his or her child, who is of working age, go out and get a job. It would look really bad even if you went into the lottery and you won that job lottery. The other candidate has two of his working age children working in the summer jobs program. One of the candidates lives on a 5,500 square foot lot and lives by the ordinances of the city of Lynn. The other candidate lives in a 4,860 square foot house in a neighborhood with restrictions. Some of those restrictions are no clotheslines. You can't have clotheslines. If you want an air conditioner, you can't have an air conditioner visible from the front of your house. If you want a swimming pool, it has to be an in-ground swimming pool. And if you want to have a bird bath or a pink flamingo or a statue, you're not allowed. One of those candidates is a Republican. One of those candidates is a Democrat. I will leave it up to you to decide which one more reflects the real Lynn, your ideals, and your vision.
I'd like to thank both candidates for participating in the Highlands Coalition-sponsored mayoral debate. And I'd like to remind everyone before they leave to please consider signing the petition to bring voting back to the Ford School and make it a polling place once again. And also, I'd like to recognize a few folks who have helped out for the evening. Jonathan Feinberg is our timekeeper. Miguel Carrasco, who is on our Spanish translation. Who's running around as well and offering last-minute questions. And Yunirki Santana, who is a Highlands Coalition member, who also helped distribute and pick up those questions and sort through them. So I'd like to thank everybody who was involved. Thank all of you for attending. We can't tell you how to vote, but we can tell you that voting takes place on November 5th, and we want to make sure you get out there and make your voice heard. Thank you very much.